Welcome to the Shift Stirrers. Before we dive in, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands where we record. Michelle and Rosemary work on the lands of the Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. As we talk about transitions and shifts in our own lives, we recognise that First Nations people have been adapting, surviving and thriving on this continent for over 65,000 years, the world's longest continuing culture. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, always will be.
Hello, Amelia. So I'm just going to ask you, how have you stirred the shift lately?
Hi, Michelle. I think that the way that I've stirred the shift lately was I recently had the opportunity to go to the Wedge Conference in Fremantle, which is the ceramics triennial in Australia. And I got the chance to present on stage and talk about the transition of using alternative materials, waste streams in ceramic work. And that allowed me to make connections and connect with amazing people in the ceramics industry, from the brick industry to the material side, and I can feel a shift coming in the world.
That's good. That's a nice shift. That's a very nice shift. Thank you, Amelia. So why stir the shift? Have you ever wanted to change your life? Have you ever wanted to move away from your career into a much more artisan environment? That's what this show's about. We interview people to get you curious on how you can make that transition. And I'm Michelle Benson.
And I'm Rosemary Patterson.
And we are
the Shift Stirrers. Today we're joined by Amelia Black, a ceramic artist and material researcher based in Naarm, Melbourne. Amelia's practice explores material integrity, time and relationship to place. Working with Australian terracotta, she captures shadows from the surrounding landscape and etches them into clay, bringing together deep geological time and fleeting moments of light. Trained in designed objects and design criticism, Amelia spent over a decade working in qualitative design research and sustainability, including with organisations like Blue Apron, Arup and IDEO, before ceramics moved to the centre of her practice. Her work sits at the intersection of poetic making and rigorous inquiry, informed by systems thinking, material ethics and community engagement. Her work has been exhibited nationally and internationally and is held in the collections of the National Gallery of Victoria and the Princess Hof Ceramic Museum. You can explore Amelia's work at ameliablack.com, purchase selected works through Craft Victoria and study with her at Slow Clay Centre.
Welcome, Amelia. It's so lovely to have you on our podcast and listening to that introduction. I'm even more in awe of you than I have been. Amelia, you've worked and lived across the world as a ceramicist. Where did you grow up to start with? And tell us a bit about that transitional part of your journey, as in going from country to country.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you both for the opportunity, first of all. It's such a lovely thing to be invited to reflect, and what you guys have created with the Shift Stirrers, I'm really excited about. Sorry.
That's fine. We like that.
So I'm excited to be here. I swear the swearing has gotten more intense since I moved to Australia. I think it's culturally embraced a little bit more.
Yeah.
No, so I grew up in the mountains and lakes of rural New Hampshire. So I grew up in a very small, remote part of the world, just south of the Canadian border.
Wow.
And so
Did you ski? Yes. When you were young?
Yeah, every Tuesday, my entire primary school went to Temple Mountain and went skiing as a school.
Oh,
wow. What a
I've
life.
got childhood envy.
Lots of snow, and they're buried in snow at the moment.
Yeah. So you grew up there, and just give us a snapshot of the countries you've actually been to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I grew up in New Hampshire, but my parents were two sort of hippies that kept reinventing themselves and going back to school and reimagining things. So we lived in the United States. I was born there, but we also lived in the Bahamas, in France, and then later in my university studies, I moved to London for a little while and then back to the United States. And most recently, before Australia, was in New York for 13 years.
Wow.
Wow. And what made you decide to make Australia your home? Was it us lovely people, or was it, what was it?
Absolutely. No. So it was a little unplanned. My partner at the time lost a visa in COVID, and I had been ready to make a transition out of corporate design, but didn't know what that timeline looked like. And COVID sort of created a new timeline. And so there you go. And I landed in Australia in 2020, November of 2020. And
Great time to get here. To Melbourne lockdown as well.
It was a wild time. A hotel quarantine was an experience I will not forget. But at the same time, Australia created this space and this way for my practice to be, and learning from the landscape and the communities of practitioners here. Everyone is so warm and welcoming and so ready to share knowledge and experience. I just knew within a couple years that this was a place that would sustain and support my practice and who I want to become in the world. So it's been my chosen home.
Oh, that's beautiful.
How long did you think about making the shift, or did you just do it quite quickly? So was it about the visa that you actually shifted across?
Yeah, ceramics and design had been interwoven. Those are co-parallel paths for me. But in 2020, it sort of forced things. Things were moving really quickly. And so it was really, the decision was made in June, and all the applications and the paperwork were started then. And I was living in Australia by November. So that's a pretty quick transition. Yeah.
Right.
You are lucky.
We were lucky with the flights.
The catalyst for moving from corporate life to an artist like ceramic work, was that involved in all of that you've just gone through?
Well, it's interesting because I think in the corporate world, I was always the weirdo artist. And in the art world, I'm the systems thinker. So they sort of like...
Bit like Michelle.
Yeah, exactly.
Was the weirdo artist. As a financial controller, I was also the weirdo artist.
There you go. There you go. And sometimes it's a superpower to see things differently. But it's interesting. So the transition hasn't felt as abrupt. I think that the identity has been the biggest shift. And figuring out what success looks like, letting go of external expectations, and releasing some of the faux stability that you can feel when you're working in the corporate world.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you have a new identity.
Yes.
And when you first discovered ceramics, was it love at first sight? Did you have a honeymoon period? And when did you sort of know that it was it?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it was curiosity at first touch for me. The first time that I started working with clay was actually in my university studies. I had a wonderful design professor named Lisa Norton who paired me up with a graduate student in the ceramics department at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And together, we collaborated on a series of handheld drawing tools that were cast out of porcelain and graphite, and that would allow you to feel the shape of an object rather than thinking what it looked like. So trying to get past that prefrontal cortex. And so that was the first time I really got into clay, and I loved it. And it became the material that I did my original undergraduate thesis with. But then I sort of moved into the digital world. And it wasn't until I think 8 or 10 years later that I got back into a community studio and reconnected with clay. And then for a long time, that had to be a parallel path. But moving to Australia has given me the chance to sort of slip more into that side of my identity.
Oh, that's gorgeous. And you've mentioned your brain injury in 2023. It was a real pivot point in your journey. And can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I had the transition that happened by choice in 2020. And I moved here, and I was really lucky. I actually got a sort of a pivot job working at Anchor Ceramics, which is a lighting manufacturer that works in residential interior space. And there I was sort of I was the R&D lead and a technician helping to make lighting and exploring waste streams. And I had sort of built this new life and it was great. And then in 2023 I was involved in a bike accident. And I came off my bike and everything shifted again. And I went through another transition. So there was the one that was chosen and there's the one that was completely unplanned. And both times there was, a reevaluating. But I think that one of the things that came through that second transition was I couldn't always rely on my brain when I was having to navigate complex decision-making about my path. And that's when I got really clear on my values. So I I propped up these values of community, creativity, and care. And since 2023, those have been the values that I've made every decision in my life around.
Wow, I love that. That is so beautiful. So with your navigation of career, country transitions, and then the health challenges, would you have any story about how these intersect at all?
It's interesting. I think that for me, Clay has been about learning to listen and coming to a new country and starting again and birthing a new version of yourself, or coming into greater alignment with who you are is a way of there's got to be an element of curiosity and learning and just absorbing everything, and Clay is perfect for that. It sort of it records our touch. When I was thinking about the transition the first time, I was thinking about how every time I had moved country previously, it had always been centered around education. So when I approached the move to Australia, I sort of approached it as a student, sort of created my own graduate program. And so for me, it was learning about the history of Australia, the history of art, the 65,000-year history of art in Australia, the history of clay and clay communities in Australia. So it's been this really exciting opportunity to sort of delve into that and do it through a lot of different communities, from the Evolve community with you guys and Amy Kennedy, to the Clay Matters community, to they do a lot of work with TACA and the Australian Ceramics Association, and they, working with that group to write articles and research more about that history. I think those are all sort of coming together for me. Does that answer your question, Rosemary?
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's something for our listeners to realize, that you can actually just be a student and create your life from there. And it's such a freedom, and your resume is amazing. Your curriculum vitae is amazing, and the work experience and life experiences that artist experiences. So yeah, that's great. And were there times where you doubted continuing on your journey?
Absolutely.
What kept you going?
I think there's a lot of uncertainty when you're making transitions, especially when you're shifting from a way of existing in the world that is externally validated to one that is internally validated.
Yeah.
You have to let go of a lot, right?
Yes.
And so, but sitting with that uncertainty feels like a muscle that we learn to flex. And the more we flex that muscle, the more okay we are with that practice. And in living in the world that we live in right now, everything is uncertain. And, the only certainty is change. Isn't that how the saying goes?
Yes.
And so I think that for me, that has been the thing that I've returned to. And those values that I mentioned have been really helpful whenever, just learning to sit and listen and be that student, not only of clay, but of life.
Yes, that's lovely. And that's something for our listeners, that it's actually okay if you're questioning whether to keep going, and to be okay with yourself about not being quite knowing where you are, sort of thing.
Totally. Because also I think sometimes we try to control outcomes, especially when we feel uncertain. We try to hold it tighter because we think that we'll get there faster if we are really controlling. The most magical things have happened when you let go and you just let the university show up. And so sometimes it's like trying to learn how to sort of almost sit in meditation and be with that uncertainty and feel it where it's in your body. And, sometimes it's in your belly, sometimes it's up here, what's showing up and what's the opportunity that it can open up? Yeah.
One thing I love about you is your use of language to describe things. So you've just talked about clay teaching you to listen. Can you expand on that a bit?
Yeah, I love language. I think that if I were to do it over again, I would love to study poetry. My aunt is a poet, and I think it just inspires me the way in which you can use words to connect into an emotive experience. So, and it's interesting because this idea just popped in my head, but, I studied design criticism, and that sounds really like academic, but it really was all about context creation to understand the material world and all the ideas that shape it. And so for me, I think that was also another thread in of like wanting to understand the context, and putting words to that is really exciting to me. And words also, I think, are really inspiring in my practice. It's sort of this tension between research and writing, and then also being in the studio. I wish there was more time for all of it.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. So I'm handing over now to Michelle for practical wisdom.
Okay, so by the way, I love everything you've said so far. There is an artist, and I cannot remember her name right now, but she's an abstract artist, and what she's done is she's used poems to create an abstract paintings, and she's a very successful artist. So I just can't remember her name. But yeah, so you can do the same in clay. Yeah, Louise Fletcher. That's it. She actually does a podcast.
What's her name?
Louise Fletcher.
Louise Fletcher. I'm going to write that down.
And she's an English abstract artist. She runs a podcast with another lady. Her podcast is called Art Juice.
Okay.
But she actually talked about that whole process that she went through to create these poems into abstract paintings. And the poems were from the area that she lived in. So yeah, something like that might be something that really appeals to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, because also I think that something that I'm really interested in is sort of craft as a form of technology, but also a form of poetry. And, as you both know, when you work with a material over time, it shapes you, and you learn from it in this really deep way, whether that's paper for you, Rosemary, or Michelle with clay. There's this, you learn about it and you respond to that resistance. And I think that poets do the same thing.
They do. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And yeah, if I could find ways to bring poetry into my work, those words, I love that idea. My aunt actually just sent me a message on Instagram yesterday saying that shadows are sentient smoke.
Wow.
And I've been sitting with that for the last 24 hours.
From your work that I've seen, that actually builds in, and because you work on shadows, so that whole fits in with what you're doing. So now I'll get back on track. You did talk a lot about, you've built up networks. I think that artists, especially artists in that transition phase, are very scared of building up networks. And you've done it successfully in several countries, to the extent you're now you're on the board, am I right, of the TCA?
The Australian Ceramics Association, yes.
Yeah, you actually have built those networks up. Can you give somebody an idea of it? Just, okay, that's it. I've just got to get myself out there and do it, because, it's a lot of people find that very scary.
Absolutely. I have to admit, I don't think of them as networks, and I don't think of it as networking. I think of it as relationship building, because I think that for a long time, success for me was impact at scale. I was thinking about sustainability, I was thinking about plastic usage, and I was trying to make big changes in the world. And something that's really changed for me is that I'm deepening relationships now. So it's less expansive and more depth. That is where being in contact with community, connecting with people, listening, and then figuring out ways that you can contribute based on your background and your skill set. There's it's a back and forth. And for me, that's been a really powerful way into the material and connecting with people. I don't know. I feel so lucky that I get to know so many beautiful people and to be part of so many great communities.
And such valuable work.
Yeah, and the way it's joyous for you to do it, which is, I think that's what I need to embrace. Joyousness in actually contacting people.
But the thing is, I moved countries and I didn't know anyone. And I went to a couple places and I said, hey, I really love this thing called clay. And they were like, I really love this thing called clay too. And it was instant connection. And, clay is like, and this is true of any material, but it's just a way of connecting with people. And it's sort of like you sort of sit next to each other and there's not that awkwardness. I mean, we're all a little awkward on the in moments, but we have a shared love. And that's so powerful. And it transcends. Clay has 20,000, 19,000 year history in the world.
Wow.
It's been around for a while.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. How have the skills that you actually brought over from your corporate business background how have you found them valuable? How have you actually embraced those within your world? Because that's, I think, something that, I'm a financial controller. How am I gonna become a full-time artist? You know what I mean? And there is a lot of crossover, but what have you found the most useful skills that you had?
Well, it's interesting because I studied art. So my education was as an artist, and then I had to figure out how to apply that to the corporate world. And now I'm sort of going forwards, but through reflection.
Was it 360? Is that what
exactly? Just spinning top, like constantly. But I think that I've been surprised that how my skill sets as a qualitative design researcher have been helpful. Project management, it's really simple, but being able to look at complex systems and break them down into pieces and move things forward, stakeholder engagement, just some of those basic things that come through as a part of that corporate training, they're actually really helpful. When we can take our play seriously and we can take our creativity seriously, we sort of give other people permission to take it seriously as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really good. Making could you give some honest advice about how you've transitioned from a financial perspective? Because I know I was talking to somebody yesterday, and that's her big fear. Her big fear is, well, I'm in this great job now, but what am I going to do? So how have you managed that, and how have you built that without killing yourself in the process?
Well, things are good.
That I say to people too. Use your savings.
No, I mean, I think that one of the things that I really pride myself on is that my main income doesn't come from the art that I make. That's a really conscious decision. When I first started out in ceramics back in New York, I was making work and selling a lot of work in markets and online and I think in pop-ups, and it was a great learning experience, but it put a lot of pressure on the work. And I think that creative journey takes a lot of time and space. So my advice would be to wait to sell until you feel ready and to find other streams of income. Because I think that in terms of I think the biggest challenge and the biggest shift is going from having all your income come from one paycheck to finding multiple streams of income. Because that it's both a necessity of the art world and the financial world that we live in today. But it also allows you more communities, more resilience, more spaces and ways to connect with people and your ideas. And it really supports you as a more well-rounded person. I'm constantly trying to say yes to less things at the moment, though. That is my 2026 goal, is to not try to take on quite as many projects. That is the challenge. But I think that for me, financial stability has come through that diversity of income streams. I will say, though, that I am really lucky to be a part of the Slow Clay community and working for Jane Sawyer at Slow Clay. She has done so much for the community to support artists through the school, and she hires full-time practicing ceramicists and gives them an alternative income stream. And that is really powerful for anyone making the transition. The last thing I would say is that I think in today's world, we think that we need to have a lot of money, and we actually probably need a lot less than we think we need to live well. Is that fair?
It does.
Yeah,
No, it does.
Yeah,
Because living well.
The more you earn, the more you spend.
Yeah. Oh, that's, what do I call that? It's got a name. Marginal propensity to consume is its actual name. I remember
Oh,
learning that at
didn't know it had a
university.
name. Wow, amazing.
Yeah. But it is marginal, and that's absolutely true. We also, when our creative self is suffering and we're in these corporate worlds, we spend so much money
Correct.
to make that feeling go away. Whereas
Mhm.
when you're living a life where you're living in your creativity, you don't need to do that.
No, you don't want things anymore. Well, you do want things, but you don't want as much.
You want experiences. You don't want objects. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
beautiful work. Love it.
Yeah. So navigating unexpected challenges. You've mentioned before that you now go with the flow, which is really, really lovely to hear. What else on that? Is there any other advice that you would give people, like meditate daily, take long walks, breathe?
I think try to trust yourself. I think there's a lot of uncertainty and unexpected things that happen. And if you can learn to trust yourself, I think those little bits of yourself that try to control a situation or make you anxious can sort of step back a little bit more. That would be my piece of advice. Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Now I'm going to hand over to you, Rosemary.
Awesome. So thinking about artist evolution, and would you call your work with shadows a theme? Because I'm wondering about themes that keep coming up for you, but you might not call it a theme.
You know, I think that the theme for me is time, it's relationship, and it's care. Those are the three themes that sort of shape my work. For me, the shadows are about noticing a moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's a way of honoring clay, because clay is a weathered material that is, it's rock that is weathered through water and wind and sort of those natural processes that transform rock into sedimentary rock, metamorphic rock into sedimentary rock. The rock cycle is one of my favorite things.
Wow.
And so we get this material that is literally weathered time. It's something that's in constant transformation. We play with it in this sort of small moment where we take it from a clay to a ceramic. And so for me, the shadows are looking at another moment in time, which is light coming through the trees, and that situates you in a place. And so for me, that work is really about playing with time and place and finding ways to relate to my adopted landscape. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's amazing. Can you, what were the three that you mentioned just then? Time?
Relationships and care.
That thing of when you've truly made it. I mean, it's a sort of a silly question, but could you talk about what you might say is you truly made it? Such a random question. And then has your definition of success changed?
I think making it and success is more tied to my work sustaining me as a total person now. And I think that what sustains me and what keeps me curious and alive and engaged, that's what feels like success now. And tapped into relationship. That's very different than where I was maybe 5-6 years ago.
Where perhaps 5 or 6 years ago you needed acknowledgement from outside?
Yeah, I think I was looking at, it's funny, I was looking at external validation. I was looking at awards. I was looking at having your name in publications. And it only takes a couple times to have your name recognized in print or something. And then you're like, oh, that actually doesn't mean what I thought it meant. It's like you just sort of are like, oh, next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And it becomes unsustainable. It becomes this like sort of a hunger inside of us that isn't really true to us. It's sort of, it's all external and we're internalizing it.
Yeah.
And I think that the shift is also about letting go of that. We don't have to be hungry for those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is such a valuable thing. I'm going to watch and rewatch this and just really try to get that. That's amazing. Amelia, if you were starting the journey again today, what would you do differently?
I think I would be less afraid of slowness. I think slowness is the real win. So I think, Michelle, you're spot on with this idea of theme of time, because I think that slow transitions are really powerful and they're sustaining in different ways. But when we're uncomfortable, we want quick things. When we know the time is right to transition, we know we're ready, we want that to rip the Band-Aid off. We want to birth the new life. And birthing processes are I mean, I've never had a child, but I can imagine that they're painful and they're not particularly pretty, and they take a lot of time. So
And
I think
we value things that take a lot of time to produce.
yeah, yeah, we do. I think one of the lessons that came for me out of my design career was that sustainability and waste isn't a material problem, it's a design problem. And so when we value things that take time and that have labor embedded into them, and we value that labor appropriately, Michelle, I'm looking to you in terms of finances, things shift. We don't need to consume as much. We value what we have. We relate to it on a deeper level than just identity. Things become our home, and the world is our home, and things are interconnected at that level. That is a really radical transformation from sort of other opportunities of ways of identifying in the world and living. And so I think that slowness and that value of time is really important, and it's not something that we're necessarily taught in school.
Yes, that's right. That is so right.
Yeah, I'm wondering, actually, Rosemary, as you're talking about, like, you're asking that question, thank you so much for that reflection, but also, like, how, like, bringing it back to you both, where do you think you learn about time? Like, is this a life thing that we just need to go through? Is it, Michelle, like, is it a health thing? Do we, like, where does this stuff come from?
I think a health thing, a health thing is part of it, because you realize that there's finite amount of time. I think that's it too. But I also think it's being in the right place. So it's being where you are meant to be. And suddenly you realize that it's not such an issue. I mean, I always go back to the Eagles song. You spend all your time making money, you spend all your money making time. And it's like you're caught up in this worldwide cycle. And you need to, when you're comfortable in your space, you can step back and go, I can take time to do that. That's okay. But I think that's just part of this transition that's so, I think, important for people that we're trying to talk to, is to be comfortable within their own skin.
Yeah.
Yes. And I love the School of Life and Alain de Botton. And basically they're saying that they talk about things we don't learn in school. And this would be one of them.
Yeah.
How to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. That idea. Philosophers have such great ways of thinking about perception and time and seeing ourselves in a much larger way than maybe our own individual lives sort of allow.
Well, that beautiful story of the astronauts that went and they looked back at their planet and they realized we're just a tiny planet, and gave them
And
a
there is
concept.
there's no borders.
Yeah. In a massive solar system.
Yeah.
Which is a galaxy of many.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Rosemary, we could get
Michelle.
right off track here, so we better get back on track.
Get going.
This is a
Stop
glass
wasting
of
time.
wine. No, this is a glass of wine, deep metaphorical talking session. Okay, so what about your work is currently exciting you?
Well, I think at the moment I am really excited by giving myself time to go deeper into materials. I had the immense fortune to be a part of a project called the Material Provenance Project that was sponsored by Clay Matters, and it has begun the process of community-led research into materials. But that's an evolving journey, and I'm really interested in understanding those journeys of materials both at a systems and supply chain scale, which is sort of my old hat, but then also that personal relationship in the studio and the craft relationship with materials, and sort of understanding those things. They're both driving my curiosity and my research. And being more, so I'm looking forward to being more comfortable bringing both of those things together. In practice.
Yeah. So what's on your dreams and goals list then?
I would really love to use my time in the ceramics world to support the creation of better tools and systems that support the professional growth of makers. I believe deeply that craft is that intersection between material science, technology, and poetry. And it's integral to how we think about the world we're trying to create, that we're trying to believe into existence from an environmental responsibility standpoint. So I really want to position craftspeople as subject matter experts in co-creating that. And so that's my big dream.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah. That could
That's
take
really
many forms, but yeah, I love
Full
working
of
with industry.
stakeholder engagement, pull
Yeah.
that skill in.
Yeah, you just made me think of all these things that I'm asking you these questions and talking to you about time. And as my head's popping with ideas of areas I would like to explore. Yeah. So beautiful.
Next time we get coffee, I want to hear all about those.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So what would you say to someone who wants to make a transition from corporate life to the artisan life?
So I think that one of the biggest things is that you have to live with it for a long time and nurture it. Learn to listen to that voice inside of you that is calling for something different, because that voice is going to be your guide. But I wouldn't rush it, because I think that when you rush it, again, that time theme,
Yeah.
the external voices, that super ego is like sitting on your shoulder saying, should.
Yep.
And that leads you to try to control what making that shift is going to look like. And the real magic is when you let go of that control and you just create a lot of stability for all the uncertainty. Because, when we're looking at careers now, I think there's a lot of science and reflection that says a career lasts 10 years and then we're reimagining ourselves. So getting good at that and building the stability to make that transition, it could look like so many things. It could look like working less hours and creating more space. It could look like creating a small space in your home to foster that interest. It could be so many things. It could be jumping on an airplane, putting all your belongings in a suitcase, and imagining a whole new life, which is what I did. But I don't necessarily recommend that to everyone. It's a bit of a ballistic choice.
I think for me, the voice was always in my head, right? And the voice got so loud that I had to obey the voice.
I remember a moment where, as part of my recovery, I went to a silent meditation retreat. And in that retreat, we were asked what we hold sacred. And my agnostic internal voice was like, I don't hold anything sacred. And I'm not going to bow down to things. And then I was like, wait, I do hold something sacred. And opening that up and allowing that space. And, you said it's like the voice is in your head. I think that the voice was in my head, but it wasn't quite in my body yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so learning how to let that voice be in your gut.
Yeah.
And in your heart. Yeah.
I can't believe how much I'm learning off you.
Yes.
It's actually, Amelia, I will say this. You have a way with words. I love it. You're able to capture something and actually peel down to the center of the question and come up with a succinct answer in very few words that make a lot of sense. It's a beautiful, beautiful skill.
Oh.
And the wisdom that you've given us today is just incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I'm
going to go to my signature quirky question. And that is, if you could give your past self one superpower to help make your transition easier, what would it be?
Probably trust.
I like that one.
I didn't trust, and it led to a lot of clinging and holding on to things. And that, when you're holding on to something, it doesn't create a lot of space for new things to come.
Yeah.
So trusting is really, really important. And it's
Oh my
hard.
gosh. Beautiful. I'm Rosemary, I love the fact that we put this superpower question in, because every time both of us sit here and go, oh, that's so good.
I love it. Also, it's a great, as a design researcher, my favorite question to end was, what if you had a magic wand? What would you create for yourself? And I think it's that beautiful opportunity. You give someone a gift. What you two are doing in terms of giving people opportunities to reflect and to see things through a certain lens of transition is so powerful. And it's such a gift I feel really lucky to be a part of this project.
We're so lucky to have
You're
you.
a gift. Okay, well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure interviewing. I'm on a high. I'm on a high. So my whole day is going to be made nice by this interview. So thank you very much, Amelia.
Thank you.
So, Rosemary, what are the key learnings you've got out of the interview with Amelia today?
Lots of learnings for artists, for our listeners, and learnings for me. I think I really like that consistency matters, and keep creating quality work that's not massive, just that consistent quality work, and that's going to help me with my books. What about you?
Well, I got two. Mine were to find your own people. And I think when Amelia's talking about it, she's talking about the community that you have in the art world. But I think you can relate that to anything. So it's find your own people in life as well as in your art world, and to keep showing up even when things go wrong. So we all have bad days. We all have days when we think our art sucks, but you've got to keep showing up.
We have days when we wonder why we do it, don't we?
We do. All right. So what's your inspiration for the week, Rosemary?
Well, I'm inspired by Pamela Allen. She's 90. She's written 50 books. I read her books to my daughters when they were babies, and I've read them to my grandchildren. She's a beautiful illustrator, and I think she's got an exhibition at the moment. But what's inspired me about her is she's 90, and I want to keep writing books till I'm 90.
Maybe I want you to keep writing them till you're 100. So
yes. All right. Another goal. Your inspiration.
Do you remember when we talked about the fact that I'd been to Port Douglas? I took some photographs of the crab balls on the beach. Well, I finally finished the prototype bowl, which I'm now putting it up for you. It's a white porcelain bowl with, for those who are listening, it's a white porcelain bowl with little crab balls on the edge. You can actually see it because it's the homepage on my website. And I'm very happy with the results of the work.
And people can purchase it once you've gone past the prototype.
Yeah, this is a prototype. It's like my first baby,
It's a
so
beautiful
I will
piece.
keep it. But yeah, I will be making more, and I will have them available.
Yay.
So Rosemary, next
Yes.
we have Kath from Bent Wires, who is a artisan jeweler at the Rose Street Artist Market. Both Rosemary and I have bought some of her work.
Beautiful work.
Yeah. And she went from being a scientist to being an artisan jeweler, and is a very, very lovely and interesting woman to talk to.
Can't wait to hear her.
Yep. So till next time, keep stirring the shift.
Thank you so much for listening to Shift Stirrers podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit that follow button so you can get notified whenever we release new content. We'd love to hear from you, and feel free to reach out to us at theshiftStirrers@gmail.com, or you can find our individual email addresses and websites in the show notes below. We love questions. You can also connect to us on Instagram at Shift Stirrers. If you found value in today's conversation, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a review or a rating on your podcast platform. It really helps others to discover the show. And if you know someone who will benefit from this episode, please share with them. Until next time, keep stirring the shift. Just a quick disclaimer, Michelle and Rosemary are not experts in any of these discussions today. We present this podcast in the interest of getting you curious to make changes. Thank you.